top of this hill today, Lord, and to honor this patriot of the Revolution. And Lord, as we live in a politically divided society in 2024, Lord, we understand how much more our ancestors lived in difficult days, politically, socially, economically, what difficulties they had just surviving. And Lord, we're thankful for your providence. We're thankful for your protection, your provision. We're thankful that nearly 250 years later, our nation, though it has problems, we're still free. We still have our independence and our liberty, and we can still assemble and honor the heroes of the American Revolution, or worship, or however we see fit to live our lives. So we're thankful for that. Today, Lord, may you get honor and glory out of the proceedings here today, and may we always remember that America is here by your design and by the sacrifices of our ancestors, Lord, and we thank you for each and all that you do. We'll give you honor and glory and praise in Jesus' name.
Color guard, present the colors.
Forward march. Dunlap.
This service, appreciate you coming out to honor your ancestor, and I suspect there's a lot more of you in the area. So those that aren't here, they missed out, but you're representing them. Thank you.
It's hot and humid, isn't it? Man, it's a good day for a squirrel hunt. All right, you ain't gonna do that. Elliott. Cliff Kent, right here, has spent an enormous amount of time and energy researching this great patriot. And because of that, he has about a 300-page book here of his great history, Elliott's great history. And thank you for doing that, Cliff. On a serious note, if anybody wants a copy of the long version of Patriot Elliott's background, which he has researched exquisitely, I got 3 copies of the long version. You can grab them and then you could Xerox some, but they might be okay for your filing cabinet down the line for your relatives, etc., because the research that this gentleman did is priceless. So I recommend it to you. If you would bear with me and let me read this longer version, I think it would be useful, memorable, not because I delivered it, but because of what Cliff did to put it together, and better highlight the reason that we're here today. Would that be okay? Last point, when you're leaving here and going down this hill, please be careful. This going up is not that big a deal, but coming down, you can get down this hill really fast if you're not careful, but we're going to have to run you by the hospital clinic on the way out if we're not careful. Okay, William Elliott. Private of Cavalry, which is written on his pension statement back in the day. This is his Revolutionary War biography, He had a longer, richer life, but right now we're just going to focus on his military service, okay? Patriot William Elliott was born on the 14th day of November, 1764 in York County, Pennsylvania. The family later moved south, and the Elliots were living in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina by 1779. That year, William turned 15 years of age and became eligible for militia service. Isn't that amazing? 15 years. In 1779, however, the revolution was still pretty far away from where William was located. It had cranked up, but it wasn't really affecting him and his family just yet. North Carolina history notes that just one inland action, inland from the coast, that year, which happened in Orange County, North Carolina, a few counties away and well to the northeast of where William lived. Today you can see here in this cemetery, right there next to me, 3 markers in honor of William's service. You can't see all 3 of them. There's two of them under that little flag right there, that little marker or blanket or whatever it is. What is that?
It's a cloth.
Under that cloth, and one's right here, this veterans military headstone. So today you can see these 3 markers, and we'll see the other 2 in a little while. The Sons of the American Revolution marker notes his North Carolina militia service in the Revolution, while the Daughters of the American Revolution marker notes his South Carolina service, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. The federal headstone notes Continental Army service. So 3 kinds of service that Elliott was involved in. Each is accurate, but in parts only in their own right, a partial view of his overall record of service. And this illustrates a complex aspect that we often confront, or I don't confront it, Cliff confronts it, in trying to research the service records of soldiers who fought in our revolution. For example, militia refers to service in the state's militia. It's kind of like the Tennessee National Guard would be called today, with the governor having control over it. And Continental refers to service in the National Army, like, our federal army today, irrespective of where the service occurred. Also, a few of the states at the time considered any service outside the individual's home state as Continental service. So if you were in the North Carolina militia, but you went down to South Carolina to fight in your militia, they might mark you up as being in the Continental Army. It also was not uncommon for units from one state to be task organized into the command of another state. In other words, actually integrated into that state's militia. So you kind of lose visibility of where you came from. Before I speak of William's Revolutionary War service, let's first just quickly this is going to take about an hour and a half, so bear with me. Take a look at the war in the southern part of the United States. Of course, back then, generally speaking, the war in the South meant the war in North Carolina and South Carolina. There wasn't no Mississippi or those kind of places. That meant North Carolina and South Carolina. That was the war in the South. As a general situation, the war in the South began to heat up, and it kept moving closer and closer to William's home, just like if you were here in Sequatchie County and some bad stuff was moving closer and closer. After the fall of Charleston, South Carolina on 12 May 1780, and the destruction of the Continental Army in the South, so the Brits defeated the Continental Army in the South, the British determined that they would occupy and subdue all of inland South Carolina. So the Southern Continental Army, having been defeated, was trying to rebuild in 1780, and then only to be destroyed again in the Battle of Camden in 1780. So our army back in those days, with its militias, was having a tough time against the British. The fall of that year saw a significant increase in actions up in North Carolina, many taking place, for sure, in Mecklenburg County, where William lived. The Patriots of Mecklenburg County Regiment continued to be involved at some tactical level in all those fights of that era, including Kings Mountain, which I think you've heard of, which was fought on the 7th of October, 1780. The Battle of Guilford Courthouse, which was fought on the 15th of March, 1781. William stated in his pension application, you can't blame him, after this thing was over with, he thought maybe there's a few bucks in this thing that they can ship my way. that he was, and this is a quote, residing in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, when he entered the service of the United States under the following named officers and served in the latter part of February and forepart of March in the year 1781. William volunteered to serve for a term of 10 months in the Mecklenburg Militia Company, commanded by a guy named Captain William Alexander, as recorded in the North Carolina military records. William was fortunate to serve with Captain Alexander, who had been in the nation's service since 1775 fighting the British. He was a veteran company commander and had already served in action in combat at Rocky Mount, South Carolina, Hanging Rock, South Carolina, Charlotte, Calvin's Ford, and Haw River. Alexander's company was recruiting and rebuilding, been in some tough fights, when William joined it. So he just missed being in the Battle of Guilford Courthouse on the 15th of March. British Major George Hanger, the bad guy, would later provide a description of the combat environment that Captain Alexander likely and for sure was preparing William to participate in. Hanger would say that during the action at Charlotte on the September 26, 1780, that the British Legion pressed the Patriots, and Patriot Colonel Davie gave the order for his men to disperse through the adjacent woods. Smart. The men withdrew to what's called the Salisbury Road and then on out of town. Patriot Captain Joseph Graham's men collected at Kennedy Creek and waited for the British stupidly to appear. They waited on horseback until a full platoon of British infantry on the ground showed up. You know how this is going to turn out for the Brits. The British returned fire, but their shot only hit the trees because the good guys were already gone. And thus the Brits only did some minor damage. After the war, British Major Hanger further described this type of patriot fighting. In an address to the British Army, he wrote, quote, get this, are you ready? The crackers and the militia. What is a cracker? Apparently we are. The crackers and militia in those parts of America are all mounted on horseback, which renders it impossible to force them into an engagement with infantry only. When they choose to fight, they dismount and fasten their horses to fences and rails. But if not very confident in their superiority of numbers, they remain on horseback, give their fire, and retreat, which renders it useless to attack them without cavalry. For though you repulse them and drive them from the field, you can never improve your advantage or do them any material detriment. Close quote. Now let's go from North Carolina back down to South Carolina. Williams, North Carolina Militia Company, marched from Mecklenburg County down to Congaree River in South Carolina. I have no idea where that is. Anybody ever heard of that? Okay. To a staging area for the American Southern Army in that area, arriving in April 1781. Alexander's company was assigned to Colonel Wade Hampton's regiment under the overall command of a guy named General Thomas Sumter. You might have heard of Sumter in our Civil War. Williams' company became part of the South Carolina's 1st Regiment of Dragoons. William and Captain Alexander can both be found by name in the South Carolina military records of his unit. So this is where you begin to get it all mixed up. The war in South Carolina was very intense, and small unit actions numbered in the hundreds, making North Carolina look a teensy bit tame in comparison. I'm close, you all hang in there, okay? Buford, are you awake? All right. Harold, keep him awake. Thank you. Y'all know Buford Dennis? You should. William was soon in combat as his unit raided the British lines of communication, and in that case it means their supply line, which was typical of the Patriots. You don't go for the Brits directly, you just wear them down, take away their supplies, and they'll finally go home, and they did. William's first combat was at Friday's Ferry on the 1st of May, 1781. The action was a small skirmish, and one of many in the general operational area aimed at putting pressure on those British supply lines. Of course, it says in Cliff's work here that it was a small skirmish. In the military records, that you tell any sergeant in American Army who's ever been in a small skirmish, and that sergeant will tell you it was a big damn war he was involved in. And it was. Captain Alexander's company was in the force led by Lieutenant Colonel Henry Hampton. Hampton's force surprised a group of loyalist provincials, that means Americans who joined up with the Brits, guarding the ferry near the key post of Fort Granby. Then immediately took the opportunity to attack another small detachment that they caught marching towards the ferry. The Patriots killed 13 of the enemy at the ferry and another 5 on the march before they withdrew from the area, as they typically would. Patriot offensive pressure across the state in actions like Friday's ferry helped lead the British decision to evacuate Camden and the Camden district, which is now Kershaw County in South Carolina. On the 10th of May, I'm closing in, we'll be done. On the 10th of May, 1781, Lord Rawdon left Camden for Charleston, as well he should have. As Rawdon was withdrawing from Camden, the Patriots, under Brigadier General Sumter, including William, continued to attack his lines of retreat and his supply line, which he was in at the time. On the 11th May of 1781, Sumter's command neared the Edisto Bridge near Orangeburg and then moved to lay siege to Orangeburg itself, which was in the rear of the retreating British. And the British, under Captain Henry Ginzendanger, good British name, Ginzendanger, I love it. Is anybody here at Ginzendanger? Merciful. Okay, with 70 British regulars and 15 loyalists, withdrew to a brick building controlling the road. An express rider was sent to Charleston to seek reinforcements, British express rider. Meanwhile, Sumter called up a 6-pound cannon, which was a big dude cannon in those days, that Major General Greene had recently given him, and he began to bombard that house. After a couple of rounds went into the house, the garrison in the house sent up a white flag, and good Captain Ginzendanger was put in the local jail where he belonged. Another significant action occurring about the same time was the siege and attack of Fort Mott, 7 through 12 May 1781, by Patriot forces, that's good guys, under a Brigadier General Francis Marion and Colonel Henry Lee. After Fort Mott surrendered on the 12th of May, the Patriots were now about 90 miles from Charleston, about to run the Brits out of South Carolina. And about this time, unfortunately, our Patriot, William, contracted smallpox. And you're in trouble in those days, you know, you usually die. I mean, there wasn't any way of getting around it. He was hospitalized for 9 weeks and from about mid-May to about mid-July. As soon as he began to recover from his sickness, because he was still infirm, he was placed as a guard over the very hospital he was in, and the baggage that was left by his outfit, which had already departed on a raid. The main army marched south into action at Battle of Eutaw Springs, which was fought on September 8, 1781. William was then reassigned and marched under command of Lieutenant Hemphill to the Four-Hole Bridge about 40 miles above Charleston, where he remained with a part of the troops as a guard force until December. He was still quite weak, and he's still doing his thing. Think about that. He could have walked home back to Mecklenburg anytime he wanted to, but he did his duty. In December, he was at that point discharged, having well served his 10-month enlistment, the term for which he had volunteered. William Elliott, an American Revolutionary War patriot and most deserving of the honor we are rendering him here today. Thank God for William and all of his buddies. Thank you all very much.
Blessings on this marker placed in the honor of Private William Elliott, American Revolutionary War patriot. Unequaled liberties enjoyed in the United States today are the legacy of brave, strong patriots. Their deep faith and belief in their father's guidance today with the hope of living in a freedom fortified them throughout the War of Independence. We give thanks to our Father for his many blessings. We will never forget those who fought for our freedom and for our new country and our nation. In remembering the past, we honor the men and women who gave their lives for the preservation of our freedoms and our future. We honor the service of Private William Elliott, whose service to our country's heroic sacrifices aided and advanced the cause of independence. May we always recognize the fidelity and integrity must guard the heritage unquenchered by those who have given everything to lose. Help us to be worthy of our noble dead.
Brother Steve, Sister Mary are here, and I see other folks that I know quite well. My mother was Maxine Elliott, and William Elliott was her second great-grandfather, our third. And the land upon which you're standing and sitting today, the Elliots originally owned the entire side of this mountain from the other side of the highway here all the way to the bluffs, and it was later divided among heirs. And I can think of no better thing than you all being here today, doing such an honor for William Elliott and our family. We thank you so much. We love you, and God bless America.